I was very successful, but I dove myself into work to the detriment where I ignored everything else, right? Because that's what you do, working in two jobs, trying to survive, doing this. And you don't realize it. But again, doing the work and unpacking everything, you start to look back at all those things. I never appreciated all the success that I actually had, all the accolades that I have that I was able to do for myself. I never enjoyed that.
This is the Your Next Success podcast, and I am your host, Dr. Carolyn Sangel. I am a life-first career coach and strategist on a mission to normalize questioning your career. We explore how to build a career that truly fuels your life so you can become your own version of authentic success, one that is aligned, meaningful, and truly yours. Michele Novack is the founder of CardinalsByte, a cybersecurity risk management firm helping small businesses navigate compliance with clarity and confidence. Before launching her business, she invested more than 30 years building a successful career, rising to executive leadership roles at Bank of America and Capital One. She is also the author of 2 books on mindset and entrepreneurship. In this conversation, you'll hear how Michele's journey through resilience, healing, and self-discovery led her to redefine success, discover who she is beyond the titles, and build a life and business rooted in purpose. Michele Novack, welcome to Your Next Success. I'm so glad to finally be talking with you.
Hey, how are you doing today, Carolyn? I'm excited to be here as well. Thanks for inviting me to the show.
I loved you from the moment we first started to get to talk, and you have such an inspiring story. Not only are you an entrepreneur yourself, but also you help so many other businesses with cybersecurity. And that's not where the story started, though. So let's take it way back. Help me understand, where were you born? What was life like for the very youngest Michele?
So I was born in Yonkers, New York. You can tell by the Yonkers. We say Z at the end. I grew up there all of my life. My entire family was there for a long time. I was born in the 70s, right? And then grew up in the 80s there. So it looked like running the streets, playing with all our friends, riding our bikes, the normal things that kids normally do. I had a dark side in my past. When I grew up, I was molested as a young child. And that really impacted me later in life, but not really understanding the trauma that it brought along and everything else. But I had a great childhood with meeting great friends, and I still have those friends today, right? Like, we still talk and we still laugh. Went to local schools, met a lot of great people, and a lot of those things really kind of built who I am today, I think. Being out on, as we call it, the streets, right? Playing at night. We knew that, you had to be in when that light came on.
Yeah, when the street light comes on, it's time to be back home, for sure.
Exactly. So those are the kind of things that, we went through. I always went to school, but ironically, I think because of my trauma that I had, around 12, 13, I started to do things that I probably shouldn't have done. I was acting out and things like that, but I didn't understand why I was acting out, obviously. But I'm happy that I made it through, right?
Oh, for sure. Were you aware of your trauma while you were little, or did you block it? I mean, how did acting out look like for you?
Yeah, so I was aware of what was going on. Feeling my background, my family, right? I'm a traditional Italian family. That's what we come from. So if you know anything about the Italian family, everything is hush, hush, quiet, quiet, secret, secret. You can't tell, you can't share. Everything is about embarrassment and everything else. And, I'm sure a lot of people can probably identify with that, not only in my culture, but other cultures, right? You want to keep those secrets. So, I spoke up about what happened, but the family shut it down. They made it look like I was going through things, right? And I'll tell you just so I had wound up, I think I was 12, and I mentioned it to one of my friends whose father was a cop. The cop, he came over that night to talk to my grandparents and my mother, and it was like, oh, they're going through a divorce. She doesn't, she's confused, blah, blah, blah. So it became one of those things. I never really understood it. Again, I was 12. What happened is when I was 16, 17, it happened to my younger sister, right?
Oh.
So it happened again. So now it became, again, blown under the wind. So I don't think you really realize how it impacts you. And I didn't know how to process what was going on. It stopped, obviously, for me, but moved on to someone else. And that's unfortunate, but it did happen. It could have been prevented, but again, the way family dynamics were, their own, what I've learned, your parents, their parents, everybody learns, and you break a cycle each life you go through, right? But of course, it impacted me unconsciously, right?
Yeah.
And my parents were going through a divorce. There were a lot of things happening at that particular moment in time. So you add all of that. So of course I was going to act out. I didn't want to go home. I ran away. I tried to kill myself when I was 13, right? Like these are things that happen because you don't know how to process what's happening to you. And you don't understand why. And you're too young to do the mind work, do the mindset, clear all that trauma. And that doesn't come until later in life.
Yeah.
I got into therapy. I think the one good thing is therapy throughout life, right? Like I've always knew that I needed that guidance, that support, that help, because that's really kind of what set me on the path as I got older to pull away from my family. I moved out when I was 17, dropped out of school, right, at 16, went to college though. I joined college. There was a pre-program back in the 80s. We join college, get your GED. And then that set me on a course, right? I met the right people who guided me, and I pulled away from my family a lot, right? Like I was close to my sisters, my mom and stuff, but I really kind of just went out on my own. And I think that was more of a survival, protection, finding who I am. Met, again, hung out with a lot of good friends. That's what we did. I worked, got a job. I did very well, right? Like my first job really started when I was 14. I was doing newspapers and whatever, but you progressively do things that help you without realizing it until now, right?
Yeah.
When you look back at your life, you realize, aha, like you said, right? That's why I did that. So that's why this happened. You kind of put all those puzzles together and it makes a bigger picture, especially as you get older in life, right?
Were there certain subjects that you liked more than others?
I've always been a fan of history, the law, right? Like justice. And I think that drives from what happened to me, right? When I was in school and then I went to college, I took pre-law. Like that's what I studied for the next couple of years. I thought I wanted to be an accountant at first. And then, as I was in college, after I started to take classes and stuff, I realized that was too boring, too monotonous. I have a brain that's always on fire. I'm very creative. I got into taking pre-law classes and went all the way through, right? Like 6-7 years, took my LSATs, but then I had gotten pregnant, right? Like I got pregnant. So 8 months in, I was going to graduate college, and I didn't even graduate because I had my daughter, right? Like, so there were a lot of things that, you kind of never finish. And I didn't go back because I was a single mom at that point. So there were a lot of things that kind of, life just happens. And I never looked back and I don't regret any of it. Like I never looked back and said, oh, I should have became a lawyer. No, that didn't happen because that helped me. The one thing I always had that was really good, and I don't know, I always say the universe always aligns and gives you what you need and God always follows. You just have to have faith. I was working 2 jobs. When I moved out, I was going to school at night 4 nights a week in college. I did what I needed to do. And taking those classes really helped me understand part of the trauma that I went through, I think also. And it's a good thing because you just kind of keep moving forward. But, I worked at the hotels when I transitioned. I had a really good job at the hotel. I was doing banquet waitressing. Then I went into the HR department. Became an HR generalist, blah, blah, blah. I spent the next 13 years in the hospitality industry, running HR in hotels. So, I had a really good stint. And then I got very sick. I had snapped I think it was my disc in my neck. I was out in Ohio with my daughter because I had moved out there at one point to open up a hotel. And I couldn't move. Right. Like I remember my daughter, they had to come out and get my daughter and she had to come back to New York and live with my family for 6 months because I was in the hospital. Something had happened when my disc, just collapsed.
Yeah, what happened? You were just doing whatever. And next thing,
I was driving when it happened. Yeah, Caroline, I was driving when it happened and I'll never forget that. And I don't know what happened. All of a sudden I remember just blacking out. My daughter was in the car, so thank God I didn't hit anything. I kind of like hit the curb, went
Yeah.
into a curb, because I was going slow enough. I guess you
Yeah.
already knew my head started to feel like massive pain. But whatever, they don't hold your job. You go out on FMLA, but then they can replace you. So that's kind of what happened. That forced me into another transition in my life. And I started to I remember I was still out in Ohio, and I started to work for a company called MBNA, which is a massive credit card company. They were one of the first credit card companies out there. And
Yeah.
I went into collections with them. I got a job after, it got better. Started working with them, and then, went into finance, banking. And then that just kind of catapulted my career in banking. I, became a VP in banking for Bank of America. And then I went over to Capital One. And then
Wow.
that's how I got
Yeah.
into auditing. And, I've had a career that's been crazy, right? And then at Capital One, the writing on the wall came, right? They were very progressive technology-wise, Callan. So one of the things that I'm happy for is Capital One was always very good about pushing you to learn and drive and do different things. And they had their tech college, and I started to teach cybersecurity. And that's what got me interested in cybersecurity.
Oh, interesting.
And then I said, okay, well, you saw the writing on the wall with the restructuring. People were getting, let go, and whatever it was with the departments, and technology was taking over. And I was doing auditing. I was out in the field. I used to go to banks and the branches, and I would go audit and then do risk management and all of that. And eventually things happen, right? So you get that call on a Wednesday and you're here and this is where you're going next. But before that even happened, I started to go back to school to become I got into cybersecurity. I became a cyber engineer, and I drove into that. And thank God I did that, because when that did happen,
you have always been extremely perceptive about what's going on. What am I doing? What could I be doing differently? What could I be doing next? And so you're at a large company that has resources to help pay for people to get new certifications and things. And even though you're extremely busy, you make that time for education. And even after you moved out, you're working 2 jobs while also going to school. So this is like kind of a really important thing, I think, is that you're just like, oh, wait, what can I do if I get that? Let me get that training lab, that constant love of learning, that constant desire to just make it happen, find a way. And so you start a leveling up on your own skills by realizing, wait a minute, this industry is starting to have profound changes. Even then, what can I do to get ahead? What can I do to get a new skill set that may come to serve me if I need it? That is so, so smart. So many people are just busy doing the day-to-day that they forget to think about securing their future. And I didn't realize that started while you were still working. Okay, so let's talk about this HR call on a Wednesday, because it kind of went back quickly. So you had started going to school for cybersecurity. You're at a really well-known company in a great position. And then what was that HR call about?
right before that happened, there were things going on. There was new leadership and everything else. And again, I already saw the impact with other people that were colleagues, right? Things were
Things were happening, meaning they were losing their jobs?
Yeah, they were already losing their jobs and giving packages and severances, and all companies do that. I understand that from a business perspective, because I ran branches and everything else. I was part of those, this is what we have to do. We have to realign, and that's natural. Nothing bad in that, especially as you grow and you continue and you have tools and technology that's implemented within it. So there were issues with the new leadership, right? I honestly believe they were threatened by me because I had applied for that particular job. When you have that and you have a new leadership come in and they know that you were looking at their job, it becomes a mental challenge, like the white elephant in the room. So I think that's kind of catapulted. The one thing I have to give gratitude for the company is when they do something like that, there's a couple of different packages. They kept me on, and they gave me the ability to work and try to find another area that I can go into and everything else, which was very good, right? Like most companies don't do that. And I did that. I got my severance, and, I was working in other departments, and, I could have stayed on with them. But, I think the reality check came in that this can happen at any time, right? Like in today's world, there's no longer getting a job and working 25 years with the same company. If most people today, and I see it over and over, work 2-3 years, and the younger generation hop around like bunny rabbits. And I don't blame them because they have a different mindset than we do at, what we were taught, right?
Yeah.
To keep your head low.
Yeah.
That's, again, it's a cultural thing. It's how you're raised, how you're taught, what your beliefs are. And you have to get rid of all those beliefs in order to grow and kind of become someone and follow your own path. I was devastated. Don't get me wrong. I was devastated for a lot of reasons. It impacted me emotionally, mentally, went down. I was depressed. There were a lot of things that happened.
Yeah.
Again, I was prone to crisis at that moment. There were a lot of things that just kind of percolated. And I had to make a decision on where I was going mentally for myself and everything else. I had things going on in my own personal relationship with my husband and this and that. And, when you add all of that pressure on and then, financially, there's a lot of things that kind of just spin out of control.
Yeah.
And
So even though getting a severance package, this change in identity, this change in work, you're seeing, I don't know that I want this if I'm just one business decision away from being high and dry, left on my own. And then having challenges in your personal life, like the whole thing just seems like, how did you keep going one foot in front of the other in the midst of all this external chaos that a lot of it wasn't in your control, but yet it was very much affecting your day-to-day ability?
I had a breakdown. I mean, I had to go back to therapy. I tried to hurt myself. Like that's really kind of what happened again. And your mind, I've learned the one thing, anything you put in your mind, it's what you tell yourself. That is the one thing that I've taken away from all of this. I understand now what I tell myself in my mind is what is real. The mind doesn't know anything different. It's what you tell it. If you tell it that you're afraid of apples, it's going to be afraid of apples. If you tell it that, you love yourself every day and that life is good, it's going to be good. And I learned that through therapy. And I wrote a book about it, Shifting Your Mindset to 21 Days of Abundance. And I dedicated that book to my therapist who helped me through those hard times. Lynn was my anchor, right? She got me through a lot. She helped me unpack 50 years of trauma, right?
Yeah.
And look at life differently. That's where the work just started. I continue to do the work every day, but that's where it started, right? And thank God for that. But you don't get to the other side without help. You can't. I believe that you do need somebody else to get you through. And, today I look back and I say, I was meant to be on that journey. I knew that all of these things, and now I'm a different person. I'm a different me. I've learned to once, the biggest thing in the gap, Carolyn, and I just shared this on stage at one of the speaking events that I was on, I've learned to love myself. I've learned to look in the mirror and do the hard work and really love who I am. For the first time in a long time, I didn't love myself. All of those things kind of, you don't realize it, but I didn't. I didn't care for me first. I always took care of everybody else.
Yes.
And when you have trauma like that, you take care of everybody else because you distract yourself. That's a distraction in taking care of yourself, your health, your mind, your wellness, whatever it might be. And yes, I was very successful, but I dove myself into work to the detriment where I ignored everything else, right? Because that's what you do, working the 2 jobs, trying to survive, doing this. And you don't realize it, but again, doing the work and unpacking everything, you start to look back at all those things. I never appreciated all the success that I actually had, all the accolades that I have that I was able to do for myself. I never enjoyed that. Somebody would say, oh, I would get my next raise and become a VP in banking. People would die for those titles. I was like, okay, thank you. Like, I didn't know how to accept that because I didn't love myself. So there are a lot of things that go along with that, Carol.
And then what happened? Because that's the thing, and that is a good point, that sometimes this keeping busy, working 2 jobs, doing so much is just really, without consciously even being aware, but just keeping your mind engaged to the point that you're exhausted and now you have to sleep. And then you wake up and
Exactly.
you do it all over, but yet you never have time. You never make time. You don't even realize you need to pause. You don't even realize there's something that you need to like
Right.
work on because you're so busy working and doing what you think it means. And I forgot to ask you this, but like in your younger version of yourself, what did you think it meant to be successful? What was that idea from your maybe teenage or early 20s? You thought, aha, if I can only do this, then I'll be successful. And then, of course, it's modified now. But what
Yeah.
did you think it was? What
So
were you
listen,
chasing?
I was an 80s child. So if you,
Yeah.
we hung out, we partied. I mean, I was out in the Hamptons here, there. We'd go all over, right? Like, and I knew that that's what I wanted. I think what it looked like for me was, hey, I'm going to have a great job. I'm going to become an attorney. I'm going to, have the house. I'm going to have this. I'm going to have that. I'm going to do everything they wanted to do because, my family wasn't well off. Like, we had our struggles. And, I didn't come from money. We lived with our grandparents when my mother got divorced. And there were a lot of things that went on, right? But for me, success was getting a solid job, working hard, and then playing, right? Having that time to play when I was younger. And I did that. I did that successfully. You balance, you burn the fire. You're young, you burn the fire at both ends. You go out on Sunday night to a Manhattan club, and then on Monday you're walking into work at 5 a.m. Like,
Right.
this is what went on when we were kids. I can't explain, what the kids do today, but I can tell you that Gen Xers, we know. We know exactly what what we've done and how we got through it. And it was just, I lived my life and then I got pregnant. So a lot of that stopped when I had my daughter. I stopped going out. I disconnected from a lot of my friends because they were still into that scene. And they continued on that scene for the next couple of years. Whereas I had a baby now. I was focused. Taylor became everything to me, right? I was a single mom. I didn't want to date anybody. I was afraid to have anybody around her again because of the trauma, right? You unconsciously don't know, but very protective. You want to, I remember I was moving back from Ohio, coming back to New York. I wanted to come back to New York because I really kind of isolated myself out in Ohio. Although I had friends and I had a good stint out there. My family was back home, my mom and this and that. And I wanted my daughter to be around them.
Okay.
My friends and stuff. I put in for a transfer and I did. I got the transfer and I was able to move back here. And I moved, I think it was New Jersey. I came back to New Jersey. So, I was there and I was working for, MBNA, and then Bank of America took them over. That's how I got into Bank of America. And it became this whole thing. And, I was the first one, like I wanted to get out of the back office. So, I was in the back office doing collections, right? Like for Bank of America at that time when they took over. And they had openings out in the branches. And it opened up my world to go out and kind of get a 9 to 5 because collections, you got to work sometimes until 9 o'clock at night. I had a young kid, had to worry about there are things that happen, right? Like as a single mom, you got to juggle stuff. And kind of just was the first one to actually transition out of the back office into a branch. I got an assistant manager job and then, became a manager and VP, like blah, 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 blah. And I'll tell you, like, that really kind of defined where I was going in life, right? Like now you had an identity, where you're going to go next. And, you said it earlier, when you build a career, that becomes your identity. And it shouldn't. I'm going to tell people it should not. And that's the problem because most people don't know what to do when that identity walks away. And it goes away for whatever reason. It could be to failing health. It could be to anything, right? It could be to the pink slips. It could be to anything, right? And that's where a lot of those cycles of your mind lose its ability to function the right way. And you've got to overcome that. You've got to build a strong foundation within yourself. Again, loving yourself first. And it's hard because you got to look in that mirror and say, who am I? And I tell this to everyone, look in that mirror 100 times and say, who am I? And you start crying because you don't like what you see in yourself. Look in your eyes, your own eyes, not through somebody else. Because you always want to get validated by somebody else. That's just natural, right? Like we do these things and we trauma bond. I call it trauma bond. That's why you choose the husbands or the people in your life and, you trauma bond with them a lot of times. And sometimes those are toxic and they're not good, right? But you trauma bond and that's why you've chosen them. And, again, these are things that you learn later on in life. It's not something that's natural. It's not something that you don't see. And again, if this message can reach anybody who may be going through something, reach out. There's plenty of people. And don't always trust the people that surround you, because they can only guide you so much. Not to say that your family and friends aren't good, but sometimes an external person who with a different perspective and doesn't know you is even better. Because they're
Yes.
going to give you that hard fact of what they actually see or look at. Right?
Yes.
But that's what I'll say, you know.
Imagine what your life would be like if your career aligned with who you are, what you do best, and actually fueled the life you want. At Next Success, we support all ages and stages through career transitions, from students exploring majors or careers to job seekers actively searching or reimagining their next move to professionals committed to self-awareness and leadership growth. Yeah, that question of like, who am I if I am not what I do is a huge one. It's such a huge one. So you start asking that question and you start looking in the mirror and you start getting on this journey to not just be you walking around in your body all day, but to actually start to love you. And what's the process after you start looking in the mirror? And let's say you look in the mirror and you're like, ugh, how do you get past the ugh and start getting to,
You cry.
oh,
You cry.
ah,
So, my book is about steps, right? Like you have to get one chapter, you do the exercises, and then you do that for 21 days. Because
nice.
what I have to understand is it took me a little bit longer than 21 days, but then as I got through a process of what I needed to unpack, who am I is a fundamental question, because then you start to realize all these things that happen to you. You have to live through all of those things. Every single thing, year by year, minute by minute, you have to get through it. And it could be crying, it could be anger, it could be anything that comes out of those questions. When you're looking at yourself and you're really asking yourself, who am I? You have to be truthful. It's about being truthful and accepting, right? You may have to go through that grievance process, or you may have to go through the resentment, the hatred, whatever it might be, to get to the other side. So it's going to come with things. But the journey is well worth it once you release it. Once you get to that phase of accepting the things that may or may not impacted you in your life, you come to the other side. And acceptance and forgiveness is even more powerful. I had to forgive not only myself, but a lot of people, and come to peace with that and put it where it belongs, right? What I've learned
Where does it belong? How do you know where it belongs?
It belongs with the person that it started with, not you. You're not meant to carry that, right? But one of the things I'll add to that is, in life, we all have expectations of someone else. And an expectation you will never, ever, and that's one thing I've learned, it's my expectation of what Carolyn should be doing. And when Carolyn doesn't live up to my expectation, then I'm angry, pissed, mad, whatever it might be, whatever emotion that triggers, right? If it's happiness, joy, whatever, right? And I only fail myself because it's my expectation. I have to take the responsibility and that expectation and that accountability, because it's not Carolyn's fault that she didn't live up to that expectation. It's my own expectations I set for her that she can't live up to. And if that's not something that I expect from her, right? We talk about, let's put up boundaries. Like in a relationship, if you're not getting treated right, or you have a certain standard once you find yourself, right? And you really love yourself and you say, this is what I want for my life. Like if you love somebody, you got to meet them in the middle. And sometimes you realize that maybe that partner is not the right partner, even after 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, 20 years, whatever, right? 20 years marriage. No, I know. You know, right? And it hurts on both sides. There's always going to be that pain, that anger, that anguish, because you have to pull away and do what's right for yourself. And that is hard. It's very hard. A lot of people don't, and that's why they stay in these relationships. But go to therapy then. If you love that person and you really feel that there's value there and they're doing the things and they're going to give you what you need, of course, you got to make compromises in that. There's not everything hard line, but there are a couple of things that are a no-no.
Yeah, right.
There's some red flags that you really got to, snap out of. But that's hard to do. I see it with a lot of relationships and people and, friends of mine or whatever it might be are still in these marriages or relationships and, sometimes they're abusive, sometimes they're whatever. And they stay and, I don't give anybody advice. I ask them, well, what is it that you want for your life, right? Like when somebody starts telling me, I'm like, well, okay, I'm not going to say leave them because
Right.
I know that they have to come to their own terms, right? They have to do their own work, but you can ask them questions to help them realize that and walk them through it. And that's what I've learned, right? Like when somebody says, oh, I just had a friend of mine tell me a couple of weeks ago that her husband hit her and threw it to the ground. And I said to her, I said, well, how did that make you feel?
Yeah.
Right? Well, what are you thinking? And I just let her talk. Like sometimes you have to not give the advice.
How did you learn? Were you always like that, or did you learn that? Like,
I learned that.
so
Learned
much
that.
you're just trying to tell people what your thing is, but nobody
Well,
wants
yeah,
to
you
hear
remember
it.
I'm a saver, so are you, right? Go in and
Yeah.
save them. So
Yeah.
I had to learn that because, we always wanted to go in and fix the problem. We were fixers, right? But I had to learn that and, we fail at listening. And it's very hard for me to listen to people. It took me a long time to listen to what they were actually saying. And that was one of the things that I had to accept. And I think a lot of us, whatever goes on in your mind, when I'm talking, we all tend to take something that somebody says and veer off because we get thoughts, right? Like our mind doesn't shut down as we're having conversations.
Yeah.
And that's why people interrupt. That's why because you want to get your word out. You don't want to forget. And it's hard. Carolyn, it's hard. And, I can't say I'm perfect at it. When it comes to certain things like my daughter, I always want to give her advice. She's like, I don't need your advice, Mom. Don't give me your advice. I just want to tell you something because you can't help it.
So hard.
You want to fix it. You want to save them. I still struggle with that. I struggle with that with my daughter all the time. I'm doing better with my grandson. But again, you have these tendencies and traits that are really hard. You battle that. And you have to recognize it's happening in order to stop it, right? To recognize that you're actually doing that and then stopping it, right?
Super hard.
Your brain only knows what you tell it.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't care what anybody says. Your brain is a computer, and what you input it is what it's going to learn. Just like AI. What you tell it, it's learning from you. Your brain is learning. It's the same thing. AI, you're AI.
And the thing is that unless people have done work, the operating system that your brain is running on was installed between ages 3 and 5. And
That's
meanwhile, your phone pushes you for automatic updates. Your computer pushes you for automatic updates. And unless somebody has intentionally done the work, and if anybody's like, well, what work is that? Come check out mental fitness, mental resilience on my webpage. I'll be happy to help you understand a little bit more about your wiring, and you can become aware and decide if it's something you want to work on. But unless you've worked on it, you're still operating. That's why you react instead of responding. I think we're hearing such amazing, wise nuggets from you, Michele, because you have intentionally spent a lot of time reprogramming your brain like a computer, giving it the thoughts that you want it to hold on to and you want it to carry forward. So now let's talk about this cybersecurity, because we've sprinkled it a few different times, but you left this wildly successful career in the banking industry, not by choice, well, kind of maybe by force, but you were given an option and you chose, nah, no thanks. You had already kind of done some cybersecurity education. And then what happened? Like, do you work in cybersecurity now? How did that work? And, where are you working?
It didn't actually jump right in, right? Still was going in school. I had to finish school. So I left Capital One and I went on to another smaller bank. And I started to do operations. They had been conserved and they were coming out of conservatorship. So they had brought me in to kind of restructure the risk governance, right? Basically. Operations in the back house and everything and rebuild, because people that were there were actually walked out in handcuffs.
Wow.
Then you're talking a bank, right? I was brought in to run a department and come in and restructure that department. So I still had to work because I had to make money, right? Like I went through a lot of my savings. There were a lot of things that happened financially throughout that process. So I was doing that and continuing with school. I was going to school 5 nights a week, cyber engineering, right? And it really became 7 days a week because, you have to do projects. You're learning technology, you're learning processes, you're learning everything from the ground up, right?
Yeah.
What's a router? What's this? What's that? You're networking. We call it the OSI layers, but you're learning everything. And I remember I started this new job, I was doing that because I needed a paycheck and going to school at night and doing homework. You went from 6 to 10. 10:30. I was 10:30 4 nights a week, right? I was at Columbia. And it was intense. It was intense.
Yeah.
So your brain was on fire, but I did that. And then I started my business ahead of time, right? I started to build the website. I knew going to school. So I kind of was doing these things. And like you said, I've been always one of those that multitasking and doing things, I enjoy just doing. And you do get burnt from it. You got to take your mental breaks. I've learned to do 15 minutes of work, take a minute break, get up, walk around. And that's important. Do 30 minutes of work, take a 3-minute break, get up and walk around. Like, it's so important to break mentally.
Yeah.
I started my own business. I started to put the, website. I knew nothing about owning a business. I helped my husband build a business, but I really knew nothing about running a business. So I went and I did some resources because I've always been reliable on myself. And I found this agency called WETC, Women Economic Development Group, that actually supports women entrepreneurs to open a business. And I wound up taking a 6-month course with them. It taught me everything. I mean, marketing this, building a business plan, finances, managing this, that. Like, it was such a great resource. And I'm so happy I took it because I knew, again, I need to learn everything. I knew about hiring. I knew about running banks. I knew about running branches. I knew about all of this stuff. But when you're doing it for yourself, it becomes a lot different, right? Like, how do you build, what's a P&L? What's a balance sheet? How do you understand your cost, right? You understand how do you, do client acquisition, right? Like, I knew I had a lot of skills and I understood it from being in banking, running branches, opening branches, and being out in the community. Like, I had certain skills. But those were already businesses that were implanted, right? Building your brand and all of that. So that's where I started building my brand, right? Starting to research that. Like, I knew I was going to be opening this company come Wine. And that's what I started. I started building my brand, doing all the work, laying the foundation, because that's very important. Didn't come without fears, didn't come without crying at night. Especially after I launched it, right? Like, no money,
Yeah.
You become very overwhelmed, and that led to my next book, Overcoming Your Fears as an Entrepreneur. But I had a lot of hard lessons. I learned how to get grounded, how to build a structure around what you do, how to stick to that structure, how to make sure that you meet those goals, how to set relevant goals, check those goals, and live to what you're saying, right? So I started to build. I got my website. I started to connect. I started to get out there. I started to get my first couple of clients. And the reason why I did cybersecurity for small businesses and I focus on the audience that I focus on is because my accountant came to me and she had to comply, right, with cybersecurity. A lot of changes with the IRS and FTC and all of this. And she's like, I have no friggin' idea what I'm doing. I know that you do cybersecurity or you're learning, blah, blah, blah. Can you help me? So she really was my first client.
That's cool.
And my practice, and I put it into place and put the process and built a baseline for her in compliance and helped her get certified because you need to become compliant with NYDFS and then, NY Shield and some other things. But that's where I started. And then, kind of word of mouth and then getting clients from here. And, I never paid for an ad ever. I got to tell you right now, I don't believe in campaigns. I don't believe in paying for ads. It's all been organic, word of mouth, growth, right? Like, that's it. Referrals. If you like my service, refer me. The best thing that you could do is refer me. Meeting, networking with the right people. I've met a lot of people. Networking is very hard, right? Like, you got to weed through that and time that you waste and so on and so forth. So that's one of the other things you learn is, running a business. Like, everybody was here like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm so important, but you're not.
Well, I think that's a super important thing is what is the motive of the person that you're talking with? And what's in it for them? And are they being authentic? And are they somebody that you want to align with or not? Or are they just looking to get their little pitch out and move and next? And you're like, okay, you really don't care about me. You're just trying to
care about yourself versus I think more authentic networking is a give and a take, and it's a understanding, and it's a listening, and it's a trying to get to know the person first. Who are you without what you do?
Right.
So,
And that's hard looking at people, right? Like in figuring out who they are on a stance. That was another skill you have to learn, right, Carolyn? Like,
Yeah.
and I've always been good at analyzing a room, walking in quiet. I've always looked around the room. I'm the one that sits and I'll analyze everybody, but not in a bad way. I'm not judging. I analyze to understand who they are. And you see how they interact with other people. You see who's sitting in the corner by themselves. You see who's out there loud and has that fake face on it, right? Like you watch a room, you can understand how they are, right? But it's key to understand that, especially in business, because it helps you understand your clients' needs, and how they will handle things that you tell them, right? Because everybody's different. They all have their own unpacking to do or their own background, right? So analyzing people and understanding them is a hard thing to do. And I don't always get it right. I don't pass judgment. If somebody, I hate gossip. I'm not one of those. And everybody knows that. Don't tell me. Because you want to come up and talk about somebody, I look at them and say, well, did you tell them that?
it's good though.
Shut
It's
them
true.
down.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you tell them that, because if you didn't, I really don't want to hear it. I don't have the time for this, right? Like, and you've got to, again, put up your boundaries. If it's important and you need to know it, right? Like if it's something that impacts you,
Right.
what does that mean? So
what are your tips for if somebody is, let's say they realize they need to go do networking, and whether that's for them getting a job or for them as an entrepreneur trying to, gain some clients or meet some people, what are your go-to tips for if you're going to go to this thing, the date, time, location, now you're going to show up in a room full of people you don't know. How would you approach that, or how would you suggest somebody consider it?
yeah, so listen, there's a lot of different tips that I can give, and I'll just talk from personal experience. First of all, to get out there and get your brand name, you need to know who you are, and you have to put a bio, you have to put a media package together, you have to get those things together. You have to kind of define what you're doing and what you're delivering, and you'll revise that a million times, right? I have built into my process, every morning I wake up at 5:30 in the morning and I listen to YouTube's Billionaires Talk, right? Tips from billionaires, the tips from millionaires, like how they've run their business. I've met some influential people. I was at a conference and I met Tommy Hilfiger. Like he very influential, just listening to people. So you learn from people who've already done it, made their own mistakes. That's key. Have a structure in your day, 15 minutes a day to do different things that are very important. Create goals for yourself, right? I do all of my social media early in the morning, get it out of the way. And then I don't look at it the rest of the day, set it and forget it, right? I listen to the news every day in my industry, right? I find out what the current trends are so I can understand, because anything that impacts my business, I need to know. I need to share with my clients. I need to take a look at our processes. I need to know what I might have to put out there, update, whatever it might be. You're responsible when you become a business owner for everything that happens within that business, whether you have employees or not. Okay. Yeah. Connect. But when you're building your business and your first networking is, because a lot of people get scared. They don't, again, know who they are. You have insecurities. And when you walk into a room, that's what triggers it. And you've got to work, again, through those insecurities. It's your own. Don't set those expectations on the other people. And who cares what they think? I walk into a room, I could care less what people think. If you don't like me, don't talk to me. And I will tell you, well, okay, well, thank you. Bye. And I walk away. Like, I won't even entertain the conversation. If somebody comes over to me and they start a conversation, I'm like, okay, well, I got to go over there. Thank you. Like, I'll walk away. Like, I won't even entertain it anymore. And again, they may not like me. I'm not looking for that approval anymore. So when you're networking, I would tell you, don't be afraid to take some classes on speaking, right? Toastmasters. Join your local Toastmasters. It'll help you build that confidence. That's where I started too, right?
Yeah.
It'll help you build that confidence to speak to people, interact with people, listen to them better. But Toastmasters is free. Like, you can join them, right? Join a local organization, do like a WETC or whatever it might be, that will help you understand how to build a business, how to market, how to get yourself out there. Find a mentor. I'm part of Rewrite the Code, women organization for cybersecurity. And I mentor young women in cybersecurity that are growing their careers and it's still in school and want to go out. Find a mentor. Reach out to somebody on LinkedIn. Get yourself on LinkedIn if you're not. And look in your field. LinkedIn gives you dozens and dozens. Read people's bios about them. And if somebody connects with you and you say, yeah, I like to do that. I like what he's doing. Reach out and send a message. Say, hey, listen, I'm looking for a mentor because X, Y, Z. Don't be afraid of being shut down. You may have to do it a couple of times. I did it, but I found a really great mentor. And that mentor's been with me for the last 4 years. And I need a sounding board. You need a sounding board to throw things off of and an idea. And again, someone outside your family and your normal circle. Because I can't tell you, a lot of the people that you think support you in doing this do not.
Well, they don't understand what you're actually doing or
they're in the
scared.
grind. They want a 9 to 5. They're stuck by the hand in the mission, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of courage to become your own boss. Look at the major people that have started businesses. Some of them have never even graduated high school and they're billionaires, right? So you need to educate yourself. And I've always been educational. So educate yourself really well in the industry that you're in and that you're interested in. That's very important. You want to become the authority in that industry. You want to become the expert in that industry where people look for you to give advice, right? So start your own little web class. One of the quickest ways to probably do things is, go to StreamYard, hook up your Facebook, TikTok, whatever you want to do, your LinkedIn page, and set a class that you're going to do a web class teaching somebody free. You're right. A free class. Yeah. It's a live event on those 3 channels. Do it once a week. Do it consistently. Maybe you have a love of how to plant flowers. Just do it. Teach people how to plant flowers and how to save them, right? How to, change your own oil. Whatever you're into, you can do that. It's a very simple step, but what that will do in the world today, especially with AI and GEO, as we call it, instead of SEO, GEO is the new LLM where people are searching for businesses and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's geo-engineering, right? Optimization. So instead of SEO, like everybody, when you search Google, that's an SEO. So, search optimization. Now it's geopolitical. It's all the LLM that does it now for you. And you want to build citations in LLM. And that's the best way to do it because they only build citations on news articles and actual authority. Right. So if somebody's searching, give me a small business or a cybersecurity company that handles risk management near me, I want my name, CardinalsByte, to pop up. Right. Yeah. And the only way you do that is to build authority out there. And the way you do that is what I'm saying is take the simple steps, the free steps to do that. And that's very important. And that'll also help you build your brand and you'll get better at speaking. And it doesn't matter if nobody shows up. Nobody showed up from events and maybe have 1 or 2 people in the beginning, and that's okay. But if you do it consistently, you'll build because the algorithms will also pick it up. Right?
So smart.
You have to understand how everything works. Right? And then I got on a podcast. The best move I ever made. I said, you know what? I'm going to talk to my story. I was scared. I was scared. To get on. I got my first, approval, to be on. And, I remember that first conversation. I was invited. But again, I was just starting my business and, it is what it is. And then I remember getting an invite to talk about a podcast as a millionaire. And I'm like, okay. And, I had a good conversation with that person. I said, I'm not a millionaire yet, but,
Yeah.
But they still invited me on, so as you grow your brand and everything, you'll get invited to podcasts that, like yourself, Carolyn, that really share and are educational, that do things for the community, that are building, that have a following, that, mean something. But those are the things I would say as far as tips. Have a schedule. Understand the industry that you're in. Know how it impacts, right? Listen to news in this. Follow people that are influential. Get on podcasts like this to reset your mind and join people like Carolyn, right? Who can help you. Yeah, and I don't say that, and I'm not just plugging that in. You have a business that is very fundamental and supports people in all spaces.
Yeah.
right? No matter where you are at in life. Do things like that. That's very important, right? Like have that backup and find a mentor. Like those are the top tips I'll tell you right off the bat, right? And then, find resources in the community that can help you grow. A lot of them do charge, but I'm part of a couple of select organizations where I can network. And that's it. I'm not, a gazillion. Everybody wants you to join. Everybody wants you to be, but I have to focus on what I want to do. I became, I teach on a platform for CPAs and tax professionals and bookkeepers and accountants. And that's my clientele, but I teach because of that. I want to educate my clientele in the world of cybersecurity. I teach on CPA Academy, right? So that gives me exposure not only to that clientele, right, to build your business,
Yeah.
right? It also gives me the opportunity to share the resources that I know they don't have, small businesses, and educate them on DIY and how the industry is changing and the regulations. So that's very important to me, right? I mentor. And then my next step, I think what I'm going to do this year is go out into the community, and that's always been my mission, maybe to teach in schools, like high schools, cybersecurity or
That'd be awesome. Yes.
But, you have to have time.
Yeah. So how do people find you? How do people work with you?
Yeah, so they can certainly go and find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to find me. You can go to my website, CardinalsByte.com. And, I'm sure Carolyn can put that in her.
I will.
So you can find me there. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter and this and that. But, I don't sit on social media all day long. I do check LinkedIn because I get a lot of people that I interact with on there. And then you can just email me, right? Like you can go to my website, you can email me, you could do whatever you want, right? Like if you want to find me, you find me. Anybody for this show today, if you want a second look and you're a small business, it doesn't matter what industry you're in and you're worried about being hacked, phished, whatever it might be, because that's really ransomware, I could do a second look for you today and I'll do it for free. Right, I can test your systems and come in and just give you a ground base. And so you understand where you stand. It's something that's very easy to do. And I recommend everybody doing that, whether it's through me or somebody else. With everything that's out there, it's critical, Carolyn.
Absolutely, Michele. Well, how do you define authentic success for you in this moment?
Authentic success is about having a business that is scaling and moving. Having time for my family, most important, and balancing that. I would tell you that's the biggest success. I take the time to go and spend time with my 3-year-old grandson every day.
That's awesome.
I don't care what it is. I don't care what's going on. I don't care if the world is crashing. I make that time with my daughter and my grandson. So I would tell you that's very success, right? Being out in the community, teaching, watching other people grow, that's success. And then, contributing to things like this, where you can help others. I think that's fundamental. Sharing our stories like this and hoping to impact somebody who may be struggling or having, wherever they're at, meet them out where they're at in life, and living my best life yet. Building for my future, because I want to retire, right? Like, I want to spend more time with my daughter, my grandson, and building that generational, not only wealth, but life for them.
Yeah.
I think that's success. And I think that's what most of us want to do.
Thank you so much, Michele. There's been so much wisdom. Thank you for your vulnerability, for your authenticity, for all of your tips of how somebody can become something better, how they can overcome some of their hardest days, begin to love themselves again, and really to thrive. You just can tell the joy that is just radiating from you. So I'm just, again, so thankful and so appreciative. Thank you so much for being part of your next success.
Thank you, Carolyn, for all that you do, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Your Next Success with Dr. Carolyn Sengel. Remember, authentic success is yours to define and includes aligning your career to support the life you want.